Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and in this video I'll show you how I painted Beaky Bobby from Moonstone the game. We'll be using some simple techniques to get a really nice effect on the model and get it ready for battle. I'm going to be doing lots of painting videos in my new series for Moonstone. If you'd like to find out what's in store for that, I will link to the intro video at the end of this one. Let's get started then. I put a couple of coats already on Beaky Bobby, so let's go back a step and have a look at how I prime the models. Here's some of the others from the starter set, and they've been primed with a dark grey spray. And then I take some too thin coats, white star paint. This is my favourite white paint, and I use a makeup brush. I've got these very vegan ones, get them on Amazon, really super soft bristles. And I take some of that paint and I just pop it down. You could use a little palette for this if you wanted to. I just use a little piece of plastic and then I work it into the bristles and then into some cardboard, get as much of the paint off as I can, and then I just go in downward strokes all over the model, and then going over it with that white is really going to help later on when we start putting the layers on. It's going to bring out all the highlights and give us a bit more darkness in all the recesses, and here you can see how different it looks once you've done a few coats of this dry brushed white. Here you can see we've got Beaky Bobby then, and I've put a coat of contrast Plague Bearer flesh on all the skin tones, and then I've done some skeleton horde on his little cloak there as well. But I'm going to dry brush over it with white just so we can bring him back to almost the beginning of the stage, so you can go through the whole stage with me here in this video if you want to. We're going to be using lots of contrast paints in the video. I'll put some links down below so you can find them easily. And the most important thing is to give them a really good shake when you use them. And then I've got a fairly decent sized brush here, and I'm just going to give a nice even coat of this Plague Bearer flesh over all the skin tones, picking out all the different areas of the model and then letting all the textures and contours of that model do the work for me, and then just fill it in, taking my time, moving the model so I've got lots of control. Then I'm going to take some Skeleton Horde, another contrast paint, and this is going to go all over that cloak. So I'll give a nice generous coat of this, a little bit more than I've put on the flesh tone with that Plague Bearer flesh, because there's a bit more area to cover here. And one thing you want to do with contrast paints is try and get the area you're painting done in one go, so it doesn't dry quickly and leave any stains. And that's why it's good to have quite a big brush when you're doing it. Next I took some contrast Frostheart and Griff Charger Grey. I'm going to mix these together to get a nice blue that I'm looking for, because this Griff Charger Grey is like a blue grey, but it's not bright enough for my liking. So I'm going to take a few bristles worth of that and pop it on there. You could wash your brush off if you wanted to at this stage and then go into Frostheart. I don't mind. I know it's going to not mix up in the pot too much like this. I'm not all that careful with my paints, and so I mix the two together, and that's giving me a really nice colour now. It's a nice deep blue, nice and rich, but not too bright, also not too grey. I'm just going to pick out his little cloth there, and then also I'm going to use that over the shoes. Then I go back to the skin and I took some Bale Tan Green shade, and once that Plague Bearer flesh is completely dry, I go over all the skin tone areas now with that. So really picking it out, using again the texture and contours of the model so I can really get that shade in there and let the model do the work for you. Then it's time to take some Layer Kislev flesh. Really important that that shade is completely dry, and I wet this paint down now with 1 part water to 1 part paint, and then that's going to be a nice thin coat, and I'm going to go over the more raised areas. So I'm not doing it all over the flesh areas now, just the raised bits like the knuckles, the belly, Beaky Bobby's boobies, his ears, the tips of his ears. So going all over it, picking out those spots, and then we're going to get this gradually lighter as we build up the different layers on the head as well there. Again, moving the model, make it nice and easy so you can have a good position. Then you can keep your arms in the same place and you can be like nice and controlled with your brush strokes. Next I took a layer paint. This is Flayed One Flesh. And then I took a very small dry brush and I'm going to work that into the bristles again on that cardboard. And I'm going to be very careful here, just trying to catch the very tips of all the raised areas with this. Very gentle. I'm hardly putting any on at all here. Very subtle effect. And I'm building up all these different layers. to give a nice effect at the end. You could do it a lot easier and just go with contrast paint, but I think this all works really nicely. And next I took some dry Nurgling green, and then again a little bit of a dry brush over, being very careful here again not to go over everything we've done, just picking out the most raised areas. And when that's completely dry, I took a shade, Reichland Flesh Shade, and then went over all of it. So this is very much similar to how we did the Basecoating green shade. I'm really putting it on, being quite generous, working it into all the recesses, and here you can see it really transforms it and takes it from what could be very green to almost a greeny peachy colour. Then when that's dry, I take a layer Cadian Flesh Tone, and then I go in over the nipples now, because they're going to be nice and dark. So I want to bring that out and make them stand out. The model's got the texture of them on there, so it's really going to take the paint well. And there you can see they just stand out a little bit and adds to the character. Next, it's Contrast Black Templar, and this is going to go over all the feathers, so go over all the feathers that he's wearing as a headpiece, and also don't forget the feather on his staff as well. Next up is Contrast Snakebite Leather. If you haven't used this before, it's a stunning colour. It really works nicely, and this is going to be for that beak that he wears, that beak mask, and I love this. This model is actually what attracted me to Moonstone. When I saw this, I thought I've got to get it. It's a goblin with a beak, which I think is fantastic. So much character, and the more you get to know this game, the more you realise how deep all these characters are, and there's so much to learn and find out about them. It's great fun. But here I'm just picking out all the little bits now, like stitching and little pockets and things like that. Then it's back to the shade, the Reichland Flesh Shade, and I'm just going to go over the nipples once that paint had completely dried, and then that'll just go into the very fine recess that is on the model. I thought I'd go for Contrast Gore Grunter Fur next, and this is a really nice rich colour to use on the wood, a really nice brown. There's a few different browns for contrast. Wildwood's nice, but this one's got an almost orangey red colour to it, which I think works really nicely. So I'm going to use that for all the wood on the stuff. Then some Volupus Pink, one of my favourite colours with the contrast range, and that's just going to go on the grip of his dagger there that he's wearing on his belt. Then I took some Technical Tesseract Glow. This stuff's awesome. I've had it laying around for a while though. As you'll see, it gets a bit clumpy later on, and so I had to give it a good stir up. I'm just going to go over some of the bottles here, and that should cover up that little brown bit, but you'll see that later on. Then I took some 2 thin coats, that White Star paint again. I'm just going to put some little dots on the bottle just to give an idea that there's like reflections or some bubbles in there, and we'll put another coat of Tesseract Glow over that later once it's dried. And while I had that white paint out, I did the lenses of his goggles, being very careful here, again moving that model so I've got lots of control. It's quite detailed here, and wet that paint down a little bit to help it flow better too. Once that's completely dry, I took some Contrast Athematic Blue, and I'm just going to give a nice coat over each lens there and really work it into the recess. And with contrast paints, I find it's really cool just to push it and pull it around where you want it to go, but let that model do the work for you. Then we're on to some Contrast Griffcharger Grey. Once that Athematic Blue is completely dried, I put a little bit of that in there just to deepen it a little bit. It's going to go into the recesses more, and so leave the flatter parts of the lens nice and bright. Then it's time for some layer Thunderhawk Blue. Got my dry brush out again. This is the smaller dry brush again. And then I'm going to go over all the feathers. Again, don't forget that one on the staff. Very gentle. Try and keep some of that black coming through. Then it's Fenrisian Grey, another layer paint. And then I'm just going to go over really gently now, just to give it one last highlight. And that should bring out the texture. Then some shade, Drakenhof Nightshade. This is a nice rich dark blue, and this is going to go in over all those feathers again. So we're really pushing it into the recesses mostly, but I want to cover it all. So go over the highlights a little bit, but because it's a shade, it's nice and thin, it's going to work its way right in there, and then it's going to let the highlights come through. I went over the shoes too. Then back to 2 thin coats, White Star paint, and I'm just going to put some tiny dots on these lenses. Be really careful here, make sure that paint's watered down a little bit, and that gives you a little bit more control with how it flows then. Here you can see that Tesseract Glow. I wasn't happy how it was coming out, and it really clumped to the bottom, so I had to give it a good stir with a little coffee stirrer there, and you can see it's changed it completely. It's a bit thicker, really rich, and that's better. Really nice and bright now. That's going to stand out and look awesome, I think. A perfect colour for him to carry in the bottle. And don't forget all the little bottles inside too. You could put some on the vials as well if you wanted to, or mix it up. Now it's time to do all the metallics, so let's grab some base lead belcher, and I'm going to give a coat over all the different silver parts of the model. So picking out the dagger there, and then the little rings that go around his stuff. So be very careful. Again, move the model, then you've got lots of control. Most of the time then my brush is always in the same position. I'm just moving the model rather than moving myself around it. And then don't forget the little bit on the tip of the dagger there as well. And then this bit, I was being really careful just to pick out the dots, so I'm off camera a little bit. But I'm being really careful again, just taking my time and picking out all the little buttons too on the little pouches in his cloak. I like to add a little bit of base Rune Lord brass when I'm doing things like this, and it's a nice way to just change it so it's not like a solid silver looking metal. So I just dry brush a little bit here and there just to break it up. Then once that's dry, I take some Null oil, this is another shade, and then I'm going to go over all the metallics with this. So give it a nice coat, and again work it into those recesses, push and pull it around until you've got a nice even coat. When that's dry, take some layer Stormhost Silver, that small dry brush again, and then very gently I'm going in downward strokes from top to bottom where the light's going to catch it, and then just give that a little highlight of Stormhost Silver, nice and bright. Then I took some technical Waystone Green, and this is going to be a really nice thick paint to put over that gem that's in the top of his stuff. I suppose this is a little bit like a gloss paint, so it's going to be a little bit more shiny, but it's really going to stand out. And that's it, that's the final painting stage. So we've got the model ready to do the basing on now. So I'll show you how I base all of the goblins. And here I took some Vallejo thick mud. This stuff's awesome, I really like it. It's great for doing stuff like this. I've got some gravel. This is just some Builder's Merchant sand, but it comes with these tiny, tiny little stones and pebbles in. Then I've got some flocking. So this is some static grass. This is going to be really nice, so it stands up a little bit. And our first step is to put on some of this thick mud. So here you can see it's really cool, it's lumpy, it's got all little bits in it, so it's not going to be just a dead smooth paste, so it's going to resemble all sorts of earth and mud. Now ideally with these models I probably should have painted them, done the bases and then popped them on afterwards, and you'll see when I do the humans later on that I've added in some cobblestone, so I'll show you that in another video. But for these I've just gone for the mud because I did glue them in place already. So I'm sprinkling on a little bit of sand, some of the bigger rocks as well. Then I take some regular flocking, I'm going to put a few dots of that around, leaving some of that mud exposed, tap off the excess. Then I take the static grass and I put clumps of this all over it. I'm being really generous because most of it's going to come off. You can see I'm just putting lumps where I can see any of that mud coming through, and then just tip it upside down, give it a good tap, get rid of it, and then I hold it upside down, just blow it a little bit, and that makes the static grass stand up. So that's a really cool tip. Next you want to clean it up a little bit, so I just run my thumb around there. You could take a little cloth, a bit of kitchen roll, something like that. You could even dampen it down if you wanted to, but just make sure that's completely clean, ready to paint. Then I'll put some wild flowers on. These are awesome from Gamer's Grass, and I just pop it in place, and I do this while that mud is still wet, because that's going to allow it to stick in there. You don't need to use any glue or anything later on then. Use the stickiness and the mud. So once it sets, it holds everything in place. I'll put a different colour here at the front, and I'll try and work it so it's quite close to some of the rocks where you could imagine these things coming through. Then it's time to do a little bit more painting with some base Abaddon black, and then I'm going to go all around the rim, and I'm going to give this 2 nice coats, water it down a little bit, and then that'll give you a nice coverage, and it won't be too thick, and it'll go on nice and smooth. So do one layer, let it dry, then do another one. And that's it. There's Beaky Bobby all painted up and ready to play for Moonstone the game. I'm really happy how he's turned out, and he was great fun to paint. These models have got so much character to them, and it's just awesome. All the little details, the quality of the models themselves really make these a pleasure to paint. And I've used very similar techniques for all the models that came in the starter set. Here's all 4 of the goblins, and I'll be doing some more videos for these very soon, so look out for those painting videos coming as part of the series as we work through it. And here's Doug the Flatulent. This was really fun to paint as well. That pug is just awesome. So I really enjoyed doing this one. So I'll do a video of him. Probably do this one next, actually. But let me know, which one would you like to see next here on the channel? So I'd love to hear what you think in the comments down below. Let me know. And then maybe I'll do one of the other ones first. Here we've got Grub as well. I really liked how the different flesh tones came out on him, and I just did something different with the arms and the front, and his wings are a totally different colour. And then Vicious Sid, I'm not going to do a painting video for him because he's very easy. You just use the metallic methods that I've used really because he's got so much armour on him. But I added a little bit of contrast paints in different shades just to break it up a bit. I'll also be putting up some painting videos for the humans that came in the starter set as well, and all these models are going to be used in the how to play video that will be up on the channel in a couple of days time, so that's coming really soon. And if you'd like to find out more about this series, I'll link to that first one, the introductory video, at the end of this video, and then you can have a look and see what's in store for the series ahead. I've also covered the book, the rule book, which is really nice, fantastic artwork, really well written, and if you want to check that out, that's going to be linked at the end too. I'm really excited about this collaboration with Moonstone. It's going to be great fun, and if you want to pick up the starter set and follow along with me as we go through the series, or the rulebook or the expansion book, you can save 15%, which is a special discount that's available until the end of September. And if you use the code in the description down below, you can make that saving. So all the instructions are down there. Click that link, head over to the Moonstone website, have a look at everything else they do as well, but the main thing is to get that starter set with a nice discount so you can start playing this awesome game. I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed painting this one. It was really great fun, and I can't wait to share all the others with you very soon. But let me know what you think in the comments section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But for now, thanks so much for watching. I hope you liked it. If you did, be great if you hit the like button, subscribe for more videos like this one, and I look forward to seeing you here next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters for helping me to keep going with these regular videos. I couldn't do this without you, and I appreciate your support so much. If you'd like to join the Patreon community, support the channel, get some great perks at the same time, there's a link down below in the description. It'll be awesome to see you there.